I was reading about Chile recently. Pinochet and
Oh, we'll have a chat one day.
Yeah.
All right, I'll go join from over there.
Sounds good.
Good luck.
Thanks, Fran.
Ciao.
Speakers. Here we go. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Hello.
Morning, Ben. Good morning, Nick.
Morning, Keith. Thanks for joining. We'll just wait for everyone to arrive. So we've been asked to record the webinar as well, so we'll do that if you don't mind.
Happy as far as I'm concerned.
Not a problem.
I will take the opportunity as people join just to share. I wasn't briefed that we would be recording, so hopefully I don't go too far off script. Not that I have a script. Maybe a script would help. Just bear with me here. And my friend's co-host works. Trying who are these for? Try again. Try again. Oh yeah, that's all right. You got one in the waiting room there. Okay, I think friends have got it. Oh, excellent. Good. Yeah, very good. You keep doing that, Fran. We'll just set up the slides. We'll get started.
Here we go.
I think maybe you need to. Now, if you go present, is that still showing the? Fran, is that actually showing the presentation itself, or still the PowerPoint window?
Yep, we can see the presentation.
Oh, good. Okay. Well, we'll get started. Thanks everyone for coming along. Before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners on whose land we're meeting today. Pay respects to elders past, present, and emerging. So today we've got a webinar from Nick, who's our analyst. And for those of you who haven't met Nick, Nick's got a PhD in engineering and is a really clever mathematician, and for a long time has been heading up our community battery program, and more recently has been doing a lot of work on our pricing as well. So today you're going to hear straight from the person who knows the most about pricing in our company and knows a lot about the electricity industry. So it's a good opportunity for Nick to present what he knows and for you to all ask some questions. But before we get started, I'll just make a few quick remarks. First of all, just to remind you of our purpose. So we're a certified social enterprise, and our purpose is to create a society powered by 100% renewable energy in a way that supports and empowers communities. And one of the reasons that we thought this is the first of what will be a series of webinars around pricing every year. As we update our pricing, we'll give a webinar. And a part of that purpose is about empowering our communities. And one of the ways we can do that is provide them with the best information we can and look for opportunities to provide that information in a meaningful way and hopefully perform an educational sort of function. Is the first thing. And the second thing is, I guess, to build a relationship of trust with our customers. You know, our customers are really important for the work that we do. Without our customers, we don't have a business. We can't deliver our community batteries and other projects that we're doing. So our customers are really important to us. One, so we want to honour and respect them by explaining why the prices are changing and give them an opportunity to provide feedback and commentary. The second point is, when we set up Indigo Power, we really had a concept of working together with our communities, and the way people use electricity and the way they interact with the electricity system has a really big impact on, one, the prices we can offer, but two, the environmental outcomes we achieve. So providing you with some information about why we're setting the prices, how we hope you'll react, is hopefully a good way to ensure that we're on the same page and we're able to work together as customers, communities, and Indigo Power. So we've set this meeting up as just a Zoom meeting, which means there's an opportunity, that you're not, you have an opportunity to speak, you have an opportunity to ask questions. So if you'd like to, as Nick goes through the presentation, you're really invited to use the hand function, put your hand up, and Fran will moderate, and we'll take some opportunities throughout the webinar to ask questions. So we're not going to spend an hour talking at you. It's sort of a conversation that we'd like to have with you. So we've got an hour to do that. So hand over to you, Nick, to present on what's happening in Indigo Power pricing in the electricity market.
Great, thanks, Ben. So, despite the introduction, I've really tried not to be too technocratic. I think it's really more about the principles that we're using and what we're thinking about, and the chain of thought, rather than too much about numbers and specifics in that sort of regard. So I'll give the first word to DG Bolton, and I'll read this out because I just thought it was so succinctly summarized, something I've been grappling with. There's never been any lack of interest in the subject of electricity tariffs. Like all charges on the consumer, they are an unfailing source of annoyance to those who pay and of argument in those who levy them. So great is the heat aroused whenever they are discussed at institutions or in the technical press that it has been suggested there should be a closed season for tariff discussions. Nor does this interest exaggerate their importance. There is general agreement that appropriate tariffs are essential to any rapid deployment of electricity supply, and there is complete disagreement as to what constitutes an appropriate tariff. And I think that really, this is from almost 100 years ago now. And, is the situation particularly different today? I think we're in a position where we've got the Australian Energy Market Commission is currently undertaking the pricing review. This is something they initiated in the middle of last year, and they're really going back to first principles to say, what is the regulatory environment within which retailers and networks should work? And specifically with regard to pricing, what is it that electricity customers should, experience? And there's a huge range of submissions coming in from all sorts of quarters on what, again, there's complete agreement that we need appropriate tariffs and complete disagreement as regards what that actually is. But perhaps at a high level, fundamentally what they're trying to balance is efficiency and equity. So by efficiency, we mean that people have the capacity to choose when they use electricity, are able to do so in a way that reduces costs for everybody else. And equity is to say that we don't end up with bad outcomes. So people really being exposed to risks that they're ill-placed to manage. Now, these are competing objectives that, as a retailer, we sort of have to think about. But currently, electric vehicles are probably, I would say, one of the biggest factors there. And really, from what the networks are looking at, but also from the retailers, if everybody plugs their EVs in at 6 p.m, we're going to have a problem. And so that's that. 2 years ago, solar was the crux of the matter. So the whole system is changing so rapidly. And of course, you're all, I'm sure, aware of that. So within the current regulatory environment, we have quite a lot of freedom in terms of what we can do. And what I've really tried to lay out on this slide is what our pricing principles are in terms of our objectives our assumptions, the constraints that we're working under and that we impose on ourselves, and our approach. So our objectives are to incentivize energy efficiency and renewable energy use and smart energy. That can mean a lot of different things, but really, you know, as a retailer, we were set up to enable energy sharing within our communities, and this is a big part of that. So enabling people to share energy, and particularly solar energy. Now, we want to create prices that are comprehensible to a human who has things to do that isn't just manage their electricity. And we really have an objective of setting prices that we think are fair and of working together. We don't want to, you know, just create winners and losers effectively and say people who are really good at navigating the system do well and people who are, you know, so-called unwilling or unable miss out. And that probably then dovetails into the constraints that we place on ourselves. So I've written that there as to say there's no loyalty tax. So I think Ben wrote this in something that we put out with our reprice, but whether you've been with Indigo Power since day one or whether you've signed up yesterday, you're going to be facing the same prices. Now, is that a significant thing? According to the ACCC, it's really significant. You know, they in their inquiry into the electricity market in December 2023, they looked not only at what offers are being advertised in the market, but actually looked at the experience of real customers and analysed on the order of 1 million electricity bills. And what they found was this huge gulf between what customers actually pay and what's being advertised in the market. And which they summarise the sort of shorthand for that as a loyalty tax, which is to say electricity retailers often increase prices for their existing customers and use that to finance very attractive offers in the market. We think that's unconscionable, and that's really antithetical to what we're trying to do, and it runs against that objective of fairness and working together. So we've put a constraint on ourselves. We're not going to do that. That, of course, is affects what we can do in terms of the pricing. External constraints. The minimum feed-in tariff in Victoria was a constraint. That has since, in the last few months, the Victorian government has said they will no longer set a minimum feed-in tariff, but retailers can't charge people to export to the grid. So there's no constraint on that anymore beyond the floor of zero. We also need to remain competitive and remain, as close as possible or below the default offers. Now, really, some of the assumptions, and I guess this is what really defines our approach to a big degree. We believe that autonomy is really paramount. We could, for example, offer a virtual power plant product in which we take control of customers' appliances and customers' batteries. There's plenty of social research that indicates people aren't very willing to do that. This is something that we really think if people typically don't invest in their own home energy things to then pass that control over to somebody else. So that's an assumption defining our current approach. And also, electricity is primarily an essential service. It's, people need electricity. Our lives, we don't consume it merely as we're not all electricity traders. We're human beings with needs. Now, to the extent that we have flexibility and we can make choices, then there's a capacity to do some work there. But primarily, it is an essential service. And our approach in terms of how we do these calculations and set the rates is we basically want to say whether you've got solar, whether you don't have solar, whether you've got an EV, whether you've got a home battery, we really want to support all of those customers and try and achieve a very similar financial impact to our bottom line across all of those customers. So we can't really set up a transfer from one customer group to another. Just by way of context, this is from the Victorian default offer. So this is showing what makes up an annual bill in terms of its breakdown. So now the largest component here is network charges. This is the Victorian default offer based on 4,000 kilowatt hours per annum. So that $616 is the cost of the poles and wires. So that's that money goes to AusNet. AusNet bill us, and then we bill the customer, and we just do that on a pass-through basis. Wholesale energy is probably the next largest component. Now they consider load shapes when they set these prices, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in the next slide. But depending on what your load is, that can have a really significant impact on what that wholesale price is. Where have we come from? Everybody had basic meters that were read once every 3 months, so we couldn't really discriminate between customers. And retailers, to a degree, were shielded from that risk. But now with smart meters, different customers have very different load shapes, which have different costs to serve, and we account for that. But I guess a big part is to say that the biggest component there is the network charges. Speaking a little bit more to the wholesale price of energy, this is quite a detailed chart, so I'll talk through this a little bit more slowly. The price of electricity historically wasn't especially volatile. It's become much more volatile, and this is based on a price projection by an energy consultancy who are basically saying, going out into the 2030s, if the Australian government achieves all its objectives in terms of renewable energy coming into the system, changes in demand, and retirements of coal plants, based on the way these energy economists model it, they say, well, what would the price of electricity be every half hour, based on a model that they do. So it's quite a detailed model. In terms of what we're actually looking at here, on the y-axis is the time of day. On the x-axis is the date. And we've got, mid-2024 through to 2031. And the wholesale price I've represented with colour. And so you can see the daily sort of trend is along the vertical dimension, and the seasonal annual trend is along the horizontal dimension. So what do we see? We see that the prices in the middle of the day are very low, negative, in fact, as well, slightly negative. More expensive overnight, and particularly in the winter. So very concentrated. So just as an example here, we're seeing average prices on the order of $300 a megawatt hour, or 30 cents kilowatt hour and that's just the wholesale component. Whereas with retail pricing, we're also talking about other charges that get laid over that. But the key thing to say is that just applying a straight average on this, which has been the sort of historical approach, really isn't working anymore. And this, these prices are going to continue to change. Now, the more complicated we can make our pricing, the more we could send this kind of signal through. But, we've put as an objective that our tariffs are actually comprehensible. So we're trying to speak to this a little bit. In terms of our plans that
can we just stop there? Does anyone have any questions on I guess the background before Nick dives into our plans and what our pricing is for this coming financial year? Anyone have any questions on the first part of the presentation before we move on?
Look, I just have one actually, but just an interesting comment. Just looking at this graph here, it's interesting that the higher prices seem to start a bit later than I would have expected.
Well, they do, and I think maybe, and I've got a backup slide on this, which maybe I can show later, but this particular one is, so they call it orderly transition. So this is assuming that everything happens in line with the energy market operators' targets. Now, what's actually happening at the moment, transmission is not being built at the rate that they thought it would. The cost of transmission has blown out. and that's just slowed everything down. So there's a huge so things have really this is a rose-colored view, and in fact, what's actually happening is probably whether we're not in as orderly a transition as the energy market.
Fair enough.
would like.
Actually, that wasn't exactly what I meant, Nick. I'm talking about the daily stuff.
Sorry.
It's really interesting to see that, in fact, the higher prices, summer and winter, don't seem to start until nearly 5 o'clock rather than 3. It's just interesting. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And I should add, this is Eastern Standard Time that I've used. So
Yep.
summer, 6:30 is actually 7:30. So
Fine. Thanks. Yep.
yeah.
It's just interesting.
Sorry. Yes.
So we keep going.
I'll keep going. Yep. So we've got 2 plans available in the market. The Community Energy Hub plan is our what we've offered since day one, and the way we've priced that has really been that historical sort of approach of basically saying we just strip away the network charges which create peak off peak. We just charge the same price 24 hours a day. Now, of course, there is peak off peak, but that's driven by the network pricing, and I can clarify that in questions if we'd like. In terms of the energy shapers plan, what we're doing there is to say the wholesale price of energy is much lower in the middle of the day. We have a lot of rooftop solar from our customers, and something that we hear from community energy groups particularly is an interest in sharing the benefits of rooftop solar with those who either don't have it or can't have it due to renting or income or other factors like that. So really what we're trying to do with this plan is to provide some incentive to shift load to the middle of the day, and we make up that, we're providing a rebate at certain times of the day. We apply a surcharge at other times, but we're doing that in all other hours uniformly rather than applying it, say, just on the evening peak, for example, which would result in a very high cost or a higher cost in the evening when people need to use electricity. So in terms of the example rates, what this looks like is a comparison side by side. So we have, and I'm just using the AusNet residential 2 rate, which is what our, the bulk of our customers are on. Our peak rate for the Community Energy Hub plan is 48.07 cents kilowatt hour. Our off-peak rate is 26 cents kilowatt hour and about $1.40 a day. Now, the price difference between these two, which is about 21 cents, that's driven by AusNet. So AusNet send us a network charge that is 21 cents, 21.5 cents higher between 3 p.m. and 9 p.m. than it is at all other times, and we just pass that on to our customers. Now, for the Energy Shaper plan, we've applied a surcharge of about 1.8 cents, both to the peak and the off-peak, but in this case, off-peak is overnight. And during the daytime, so on this particular tariff, so people would pay about 49.8 cents kilowatt hour in the evening peak, 28 cents kilowatt hour overnight, and then 28 minus 17, so about 11 cents kilowatt hour during the middle of the day. And the supply charges are the same. And these are all local time, 7 days. And I'll show a little bit of bill impact with a couple of case studies there. But really, what this provides is a quite a strong incentive to where possible shift load to the middle of the day. But it's in a way that at least should be comprehensible. We've got high, medium, low. Daytime's cheapest, overnight's the second cheapest, evening peak's the most expensive. That's something that we can comprehend, we can communicate, In terms of our feed-in tariffs, what we're then doing as well, and I think this again goes back to what is happening with the wholesale price of energy. We're offering an anytime feed-in tariff of 1.8 cents kilowatt hour on our community energy hub plan. On the energy shaper plan, we've opted to offer a feed-in tariff of 12 cents kilowatt hour in the peak. People don't export a huge amount in the peak in general. At other times, I mean, 9 p.m. to 10 a.m. is probably not going to have a huge amount of usage in terms of rooftop solar, but we're offering 1.5 cents kilowatt hour there. And during the middle of the day on the energy shaper plan, we're not paying a feed-in tariff. So really, the objective with the energy shaper plan, what we're trying to do is encourage energy sharing and to try and provide energy during that daytime window at the lowest cost that we can to customers who don't have solar, which we really think is a way of sharing the benefit of rooftop solar with those who don't have it. We've got a couple of example bills here, and I think it's important to stress that they're examples because we're not in the business of providing financial advice. So of course your mileage may vary, but as two examples, I've just taken my house and Ben's house. I also ran it for before we had a child, when we used about a third less electricity and a lot less overnight and a lot less during the day. But this is as it currently stands with our most recent electricity use. So Ben has rooftop solar. He's got an all-electric home with heat pumps and reverse cycles, no home battery. And two electric vehicles, which partly explains why his bill is a lot higher than mine. But if I was to add in my petrol costs, I would probably be spending quite a lot more a year than Ben. I live in Mount Beauty. I have an all-electric home that's never had gas. I don't have rooftop solar. We'd have to replace our roof before we can put it on, and don't have an EV. So two quite different customers. On the community energy hub plan, Ben would be spending about $4,300 a year on our current rates, and on the energy shaper plan, he'd be saving about $350. For my house, we're slated to spend about $2,600 over the next financial year. On the energy shaper plan, we would be saving about 5%. Now, both are better off on the energy shaper plan, and it also provides, I guess, an incentive, in my household, to be able to say, well, the daytime is the cheapest. Any discretionary loads, let's put them on in the middle of the day. Our heat pump hot water runs in the middle of the day. We do washing in the middle of the day using timers, dishwashing and laundry. But we have a lot of load that just can't be moved around because we're not in a hugely efficient house. For example, in Ben's circumstance, he's got 2 EVs, and tries to shift that to the middle of the day. I can let you speak to your electricity use more, but the energy shaper plan provides a fairly strong incentive to do that where possible, and really keeps it out of the evening peak. So I think that probably wraps up what I wanted to talk about.
Yeah, I guess to reflect on this a little bit more. So the challenge, strategically, the challenge we have, I guess, is to hedge our customer load, and as Nick sort of showed, those wholesale prices vary quite a fair bit. And the energy shaper plan is really about trying to work with customers to do their little bit to try and even out. The price is volatile. It's more expensive in the evenings and the mornings of electricity. That's because there's a lot of demand at those times, typically. So if we can work with our customers to shift some of their load to the middle of the day, And my house, as an example, we don't do particularly much, which if it's the weekend, I charge my vehicles, then probably half overnight and probably half during the middle of the day. So we do what we can, but we don't make a huge difference. But there's a pretty material price or bill outcome for me, which is we're going to put a battery on. I'll force charge that in the middle of the day between 10 and 3. So that'll get larger and larger. But the point is, if we can all do a little bit to do that, then we can, as we're developing our community battery program, then all of a sudden, if we're able to go from, say, 6 megawatts of draw between 5 and 8 to, say, 5 or even 4, then all of a sudden we need, $2 million less worth of investment into community batteries to be able to hedge our customer load. So it's all about sending little signals that we hope are manageable, to have us all, as much as possible, pulling in the same direction, which should lead to better environmental and pricing outcomes. But it is very much an approach that's like, if we all pull together in the same direction, then we can create value, which our intention is to share across, our communities evenly. So as Nick says, we're not trying to create benefit for a certain customer class. We're trying to create benefit and share that equally across the board through lower prices. So that's the approach. But we can see, we've also done modelling for my house. We're working on a household battery program to support our customers install home batteries. And the Energy Shaper plan gets better. It supports me having a home battery, because for me, 5 kilowatts of solar used to be all the power in the world 3 years ago. Now I don't export. I wouldn't export hardly any of that power anymore. So,
Hand from Keith.
Yeah, I just thought perhaps you might be interested. I've been on the Energy Shaper for a while, and I find that doing everything we can to run stuff between 10 and 3, I found that if I do that and charge my house battery at the same time on cloudy days, that the house battery carries me through well into the period after 9 o'clock without using anything off the grid. So I've got 7 kilowatts on the roof, but that doesn't make much difference on a cloudy day. It's mainly using grid power to charge the battery between 10 and 3 that allows us not to pay anything on the higher rates between 3 and 9. And I think that can be pretty significant, I would have thought. I haven't actually looked at I haven't had many bills yet to check that, but we've virtually run through this winter without using peak power at all. So I think, I don't know, that could be quite significant. I don't know. I'm just,
yeah, that's exactly that's the use case, Keith, is where, because if you're moving power out of that peak time, because you're able to with your battery, then that means, again, that example of having to spend $2 million less just plucked from the air on community batteries for ourselves. That's a fantastic outcome. And we're also, with the reverse of that is the feed-in tariffs. So we're trying to encourage you, yes, to charge your battery between 10 and 3. Most batteries are set up to charge from solar. The sun comes up, they start charging at 7. They finish charging at, let's say, 10:30. And then all that export goes into the grid just when our customers aren't using power at all. So if we can say, let that first 3 hours of power go from your solar power system, then charge in the middle of the day between 10 and 3, then maybe let the rest go in the afternoon. That's useful as well. So that the signal is sent in 2 different ways, but that's the exact use case we're hoping people to try and do is, just set their battery up on a timer. That's what I'll be doing. Charge it fully. Try not to spend any money on your peak electricity rate. You'll get a pretty good bill outcome. And Nick will start to see the graphs that he's working on go from, at the middle of the day, we're a huge net exporter of electricity, then whoomp, it goes up really high as people's solar stop using power, and then it sort of tapers off a bit. So if we can start to level that out a bit, then we're collectively going to have much better outcomes together. Yeah.
Maybe we'll take some of the questions in the
Right,
chat.
yeah.
So a question from Wesley, what about feeding in New South Wales? I live in Albury. I don't have those numbers off the top of my head, Wesley, but I guess what I can say is that there's a couple of things to say. One is that we've used very similar principles in designing the feed-in tariffs. Maybe I'll run and grab those numbers so that we can talk about them in concrete terms while Ben takes another question. But a couple of things about New South Wales. So the negative prices are nowhere near as severe in New South Wales. That's primarily a consequence of the generation mix in New South Wales. So in Victoria, we've got brown coal generators, and New South Wales have got black coal generators. And those, that's part of the reason why power in New South Wales is generally more expensive. But consequently, we can offer higher feed-in tariffs in New South Wales as well. So I think I'm not going to say numbers without having the specific numbers on hand. So I'll just run and grab my computer in a moment to have that at my fingertips. But
The trick is, I think, it's just on your computer there, Wesley. You can just jump to our website and just tap in your home address on the home page, and it'll bring up both plans for your house. And you'll see the feed-in tariffs. The feed-in tariffs in essential energy are particularly good. So it's all a consequence of what as Nick describes, the cost of electricity, and if it's valued, if it's worth more, then we can share more of that, or we can pay you what it's worth, basically.
One additional thing to say about essential energy is that, and this is where pricing, electricity pricing is quite a hard thing to talk about because there's so many little pieces to it. The network tariff, so we've got retail tariffs. For every network tariff, we have a retail tariff. What's a network tariff? A network tariff is associated with your meter. It's the price that essential energy charges us. And then we overlay our other costs and build a set of rates for you. Now, we can, on your behalf, change which network tariff you're on if you request it. Now, essential energy, starting this financial year, has just started what they're calling two-way pricing. What does that mean? Historically, you export energy to the grid. That has essential energy doesn't provide any rebate or cost associated with that. Now, what they've started to do is to say, we're actually going to charge in the middle of the day. So they will bill us in the middle of the day for energy that people export. But the flip side of that is that they then provide a rebate in the evening peak associated with that. And the two roughly balance each other out. We haven't actually passed that on to customers yet. We need to implement that in our billing system, and most customers aren't on these network tariffs that have this two-way pricing. It's still an opt-in product. But certainly going, as we continue to update our pricing, it's foreseeable for us that we could, actually pass that on to the customer and say we're going to offer an even lower daytime feed-in tariff, but really boost that evening peak feed-in tariff to the point where, customers could export from their batteries, and that would actually be a worthwhile thing to do if they've got any surplus. But that's coming down the pipeline for us.
Marcus, there's one from you about I'm not getting those rates.
Just get my computer over
I
here.
think that might be a function of what the network tariff is. So you can often change between network tariffs. So if you want to get in touch with Molly here by phone or email, we can look at some that might work for you. The other thing is the feed-in tariff rates. If you're it's an opt-in, so you can get in contact with us and say, we'd like to move to the time of use feed-in tariff. The existing customers will continue with the flat tariff until they reach out to us and say, we'd like
Can you do it so they can see my face here?
In there, Brian. Okay. Let's just going back. Marcus. So we just spoken to that. Energy shaver is smart behavior, good stuff. Thank you. Keith, on energy shaver, can I set my Ubi to export from the battery when there is no or little solar?
you mean the evenings, Keith? You're just on mute at the moment.
Had a lot of trouble. That might have been my idiocy rather than anything else. Getting to the point where I could even get power from the grid into my battery when there was no not little sun. I have no idea whether the Ubi settings would allow me to export from my battery rather than from the roof, and I just wonder whether that's even possible with the instrumentation they have.
Yeah. So good point. The thing to say is most, and this is, I guess, a little bit why we're interested in working with our customers on a home battery solution, because a lot of batteries are sort of set up with the assumption that put the biggest solar power system on you can, charge your battery from from that solar system, and then you sort of just have that in self-consumption mode. So there's still a fair bit of work to do on the technology to be able to interact well with the grid and react to a product like this one. So I don't think they've done the work. I think it's possible to do the work, Mondo, but it's sort of
Understood.
all that sort of stuff.
So Steve, a question from Stephen: how do you get billing data which is time specific for the energy shaper tariff to do a comparison in order to see which tariff is better? So I guess, Stephen, probably the first question there would be whether you're in Victoria or New South Wales. In turn, for customers in Victoria, everybody has a smart, 99 point something % of the population have smart meters. Now, in terms of doing that billing comparison, I think that's something that we're going to have to assist with, depending on your. And I think again, let me take a step back. So in terms of what our objectives are, we're trying to have pricing that's relatively comprehensible. Now, doing that bill comparison is challenging, right? Because your bill impact will depend on when you use electricity. And what your particular load shape is. So in terms of how you could do it, it could be done in Excel, but I think it's probably something we're going to need to assist our customers with, and so that people can call customer care and say, what would my bill be if I was on this other plan? So I think maybe I'll just take that on notice that's a service which we're probably going to need to be able to provide for our existing customers. Where you have a basic meter, so just a meter that's read manually and it's got the little spinning disc in it. The energy shaper plan doesn't work with that. It's not available for customers who don't have a smart meter.
But yeah, we can change that if you do. But you can get the data from two places really. One is your network service provider, where we are here in Northeast Victoria's AusNet Services. They've got a portal you can go to and download your data, or you can just send a request to your retailer just to access your meter data. So just send an email to your current retail provider and say, could I request access to my meter data, and you'll have that sent to you in an Excel spreadsheet and you can run the numbers. As Nick says, we don't have anything at the moment, but there's a few rules of thumb, and for me, it's probably, my example is a good one because it's quite unusual. If I just had 5 kilowatts of solar and I didn't have the EVs, split systems, all that sort of stuff, and I'd probably be better off in the community hub plan. But because more and more we're trying to charge, we've got 110 kilowatt hours of battery storage at home. That we, if we charge that in the middle of the day, and then that last year is probably only doesn't include a whole year of 2 electric vehicles as well, and we're going to put a battery in as well. So yeah. And there's a question there from Colin about can I share from my EVs? And I guess that's an interesting question for a couple of different reasons. And I guess one of the things we're hoping to learn from our customers is how they use electricity. But for me, I'm going to install a battery that does have a DC bidirectional charger in it, so I can do vehicle to home. Now, probably though, but we use our cars so frequently, and the charge in the batteries, the charge in the car is probably more important to us than the supplying the car the house overnight. So really the sizing of the battery for us is like, as Keith described, is we want to charge it full each day, force charge it between 10 and 3. Then we want it to last between 9 to 9 p.m. Then we're happy to interact with the grid, to have it supplied by our electricity supplied by the grid rather than drawing from the car. So the answer is, we're going to experiment, obviously, but there's probably not a case where me and my wife, who's quite nervous about this sort of thing and likes to have the car, to be able to travel, she'll use it for her work. There's probably not an instance where I would export to the grid at least. It's probably more for us is to say we can use on a day 150 kilowatt hours. Like this is probably max. On average, it's probably between 50 and 100 kilowatt hours. We just want to make sure we're placing that load in the right place. It's a lot of power, and we're never going to have a battery or electric vehicle sufficient to supply that amount of power. It's our electricity has changed so much in the last 3 years, from say an average electricity consumption of, let's say, 20 kilowatt hours to now an average that's 4 or 5 times higher than that. So everything's changing so quickly.
It is changing very fast. This is a yes/no one, I think, from Blake. Can customers get account credit paid out in cash if the net balance is negative or in credit? I think the answer is yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah,
that's a quick one. Thanks, Blake. We talked about Albury. Greg, I've altered my usage to maximize solar panel times. I still export energy. I get charged for power use and get little offset for the power I generate. Energy Shaper seems an excellent interim step. What are the opportunities to get a battery to help me reduce my grid consumption when I will still generate power off panels? I think that maybe that's a segue into what we're doing with home batteries.
Yeah, so the home batteries, it's really about. So our interest in getting into home batteries is helping our customers navigate this space, because the solar installers out there are excellent, but they understand one side of the equation, which is what's a good technology, how to efficiently get it onto households, that sort of thing. But they don't know about the other half of the equation, which is, this half of the equation is to say, how do I set my battery up to, because there's lots of different options in the retail space. And our option that we have currently is this Energy Shapers one. So what we're hoping to do is work with our customers to put an offer out there, which will have basically flexibility. It's flexibility to work with your current solar inverter, so you don't have to pull that off and put a new one. Flexibility to put an EV charger in if you want to. Flexibility to charge from the grid if you want to, or doesn't have to charge exclusively from the solar. So those are the sorts of things we're working on. So I think we'll launch that maybe in September is what we're working towards, working with local contractors, and really just I think a once-off sort of offer that we'll do to help, I guess, work with the contractors as well, to help educate them so that they understand the changes that are happening in the electricity retail space, so they can have meaningful conversations with the customers. But the use case that we see is less the use case that we see is battery charging during the day between 10 and 3, trying to avoid your peak times. But if you can't, it's not going to sting you too badly, and then exporting at the shoulders when you possibly can.
Yeah. Comment here from Michelle Wilkinson. Ben, I'm currently with Red Energy. I live in Corryong, many foggy days in winter. There's certainly lots of fog around in the valleys up here as well. So
I think, and that one speaks to the working together one a little bit, because there's foggy days in Corryong, but the first thing to say is the electricity price, it'll be sunny somewhere, and the electricity price is low during most days, even if it is foggy in Corryong. And also it'll be sunny somewhere. It's often sunny, in other patches in an Indigo Power service area. So whilst it might be foggy in Corryong, it might be sunny down here in Beechworth or Wangaratta or something like that. So we I guess take on that risk of it being foggy everywhere. The price is still the same in the middle of the day, so you can use electricity, and we just take the risk of, well, if there's no sun and the prices are high, then for that particular day we would take a loss. Yeah, but that's something. It's a little bit, we go as far as giving some price signals, but not passing all the risk over to customers. There are other products out there, obviously, and Amber's probably an example where you take on all the risk yourself. And if it's a foggy day and you need to use power and the price of electricity is through the roof, you suck that up rather than Indigo Power sucks that up.
So a question here from Keith: could we get to the point where just installing a battery without solar could be smart with the Energy Shaper plan? I anticipate, let me say it depends. It probably depends in large part on what AusNet does. And the reason for that being what the cost of those network charges are. There's not just the wholesale cost of electricity. I think at least in the short term, my gut feel is no. Another reason as well is because the new home battery rebate scheme that the government has introduced, being eligible for that is contingent on having solar panels. So they won't provide that rebate if you don't have solar. So I don't anticipate that.
So that's the next 4 or 5 years. My gut feel would actually be yes on that one. I think because if you think about my house again, I've got a 5 kilowatt solar system, but that 5 kilowatt solar system, the reason I like having that solar system is because I've got a 10 kVA transformer, and I can't really export more than 10 kilowatts. But if I've got both electric vehicles charging, I've got the pool pump on, I haven't turned the pool heat pump on yet, but there's, our house can be using 12, 13, 14 kilowatts of power at any given time. So for me, the solar becomes making sure that I've got enough power. I can supply everything I want to in the middle of the day. So so 5 kilowatts in my context is a tiny solar power system, almost to say that it's not there at all. And as Nick said right at the start, the EVs are absolute game changer. Like I would use hardly maybe on a really big day I'd use 30 kilowatt hours. 3 years ago now I use 150 kilowatt hours on a really big day. So it's like it's completely it completely dwarfs my solar system, and it would completely dwarf most but the really biggest ones.
Yeah. Just on a comment here from Colin, if you don't use your EV regularly, it would be cheaper to use than buying a battery. And I think this was referring to vehicle to home, particularly, and especially if you're
That's right.
retired or working from home. And I think maybe just taking that as a comment and just zooming out from that a little bit, I think, the Energy Shaper plan we've designed not with a really specific use case in mind of saying, for this plan to be worthwhile, you must have a battery or you must have, electric vehicles, right? Like these examples we've got on this slide. I don't have a battery, I don't even have solar, and I don't have an EV currently. And I'm better off. We've got an incentive to shift load to the day. It's I would say it's material, but it's not, no one's losing sleep over going, all right, well, we have to use energy in the evening peak. And I guess, we could, and I think this is where we're very keen to have this two-way conversation, right? Is to say, we don't want to make 10 plans because that's not going to help anybody. It's just too confusing. I think it needs to be, I think we put in our blog that I just want milk that tastes like real milk kind of thing. It can just be too overwhelming if we have too many choices. So what we've done is to basically come up with a plan that we say, however you use this, hopefully it works for you. It gives some incentive. Could we make those incentives stronger? Potentially, but I think we're on a journey, and I think it is a process of trying to learn. So I guess just as a comment, I don't think we're saying that this plan only suits people who have home batteries. It's probably what we're thinking there, or at least how we've approached it. Maybe I'll just take that as a comment from Keith there about installing the EV to home. And I think, again, this maybe just as a broader comment, the space is changing so fast. There's so many technology providers, and I think we want to help our customers navigate that to the extent that we can. But I think with the plans, we're being a bit agnostic about saying we're not prescriptive about saying you must have A, B, C, and D. That's our intention. A question here from Stephen. Can you please tell us what the flexible feed-in tariffs are for the Energy Shaper again? So this one is for Victoria. So where we have so that's 12 cents kilowatt hour, 4 to 9 p.m. local time. Shoulder 1.5 cents kilowatt hour, and nothing in the off peak. Now New South Wales, you can go to our website and get those. But I've got just in front of me here. I think we're talking on the order of 2 to 3 cents a kilowatt hour off peak, depending on who your distributor is. So whether you're in Essential Energies territory or Ausgrid or Endeavour, most of our customers our New South Wales customers are in Essential. Somewhere between 5.5 and 8.5 during the shoulder, and then the peak somewhere between 13 and 19 in New South Wales. But
Thanks.
again, sorry, please.
No, just thanks.
Sorry, Steve, say that again.
Thank you.
Oh, no trouble. Okay, now flexible to accommodate individual household needs. Watch this space, Michelle. I'm not sure exactly how to interpret that, Michelle, but I'll take that as a comment. Thank you from Wesley. Community batteries is to redistribute the excess power to generate, and so this is from Greg. Community batteries is to redistribute that excess power that you generate, and the outcome is energy saver rates, which redistribute power. So certainly with our community batteries, we're seeking to, charge from the excess solar that our customers have that energy to sell back to our customers in the evening peak. So I don't see these as mutually exclusive things. I think we're doing community battery projects I don't see them as mutually exclusive. It's probably the only, I guess, is what I would say to that. I think where there's a, it's not a. Ben sort of talks about the hedgehog and the fox. The fox knows many things. The hedgehog knows one big thing, and my tendency has always been to say, we've got to work out the answer. And I think, really, in terms of this energy puzzle that we're all working on, there's lots of answers and lots of little pieces. It's going to be ones and twos, not fours and sixes. I think in
But
terms of
there's two. Like one is what's the customer load we need to hedge, and sending the pricing signal. Hopefully, we can make that more amenable to hedging. It's easier to hedge, which means we've got our community battery fleet, and we can then use that to hedge those to hedge the retail load that has been made more amenable to hedging through these pricing and people engaging meaningfully with these prices and talking about it and sharing knowledge and those sorts of things. And all of that should, put us in a good position to, all of they're cost savings that we can then pass on to our customers. Yeah, so that's the idea. But again, everything is at that community level. It's not someone would export to the battery and then be the beneficiary of that battery and get it back at a cheaper price. It's the community, I guess, us investing in these batteries and then sharing the value of everyone. We should all see the benefit flow through.
And I think maybe just as a comment on that as well, where there are limits to what people can do, and I think that means we're always going to need to hedge. We're always going to need community batteries, or some mechanism of hedging. My house, we're not proposing to be energy independent or anything like that. So, and we do what we can, but we've got a little kid. We've got a little kid. We're going to have another little kid. We use reverse cycles to heat our home, and we need to heat our home because it's so I think there's always going to be it's not a model that only works for people with home batteries. Keith, will we be able to see the slides after the seminar? Yes. Blake, so can we run through the statement from the energy shaper spec again? So the credit, so I've got it on here. So, and I think maybe I'll talk it just at a very high level here. So we've got lots of different network tariffs. As a consequence of that, we've got lots of different structures. So we're peak off peak. This is for the AusNet residential 2 rate. It's different depending on which network tariff, which determines the network tariff that determines those times. So we've really tried to use a simple, what for us is a simple approach, but hopefully is simple for the consumer, for the customer as well, is just to say the amount you pay between 10 and 3. Sorry, this should say 9 p.m. till hopefully it's clear on our website. Anyway, if you between 10 and 3, it's off peak. So you pay 28 cents kilowatt hour, but you get a rebate off that of 17. So basically what that means is that the price of electricity in the middle of the day on this plan is 11 cents kilowatt hour. So you're still paying to import energy. We're not paying people 17 cents kilowatt hour to use energy. You still pay to use energy, but we've implemented it as a rebate so that it's something that we could just overlay on many different network tariffs, rather than saying AusNet residential has this 3-block structure and City Power has this other 3-block structure. Hopefully I can.
It's very much like a feed-in tariff. And in fact, for my bill, the credit I get back on my bill for this daytime rebate is hugely outweighs the feed-in tariff that I get. So as with your feed-in tariff, you've got kilowatt hours exported times the rate. This is the same. It's kilowatt hours consumed times negative 16.92 means a credit of, whatever it is. Yeah.
All right. And I think That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. And we, as Nick describes, I mean, Keith, thanks for your comments. We're open to, you know, everything's changing so quickly. We're putting stuff out there that we think is useful. If you've got interesting use cases, we'd love to hear them. If you've got comments or ideas about what works or what doesn't work for you, we'd love to hear that.
Yep.
As well. So you're very welcome to send us an email to the Connect at or you know, give us a call. We're working on this at the moment, and you know, these are the two we've got. But if there's a call across our customer base or others interested in supporting us, that they want a different product or they want a different something, they want to see these products changed, then we're very we've got the principles we apply, but we're very open to have the conversation around what we can do within those. So thanks everyone.
Really good stuff, fellas. Thanks very much. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Keith.
Thank you all for coming. This was great.
Yeah, thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you. It's good.
Thank you. Bye.